Okay, guys, this is going to be my review of the 2006 film The Departed, and I really liked it. I think it's not your typical cop film, and I think it very much puts the twist on, say, hey, the criminal is kind of infiltrating the cops, and the cop is infiltrating the criminals, and I think this idea of like the rat or the mole in the organization, and both kind of both organizations, the cops and the thieves, having to figure out who it is. And it's a very smart film. And I think its best parts are probably the kind of heavy, I guess, um, not ironicness, but heavy symbolism, as as in, you see the cops, trying to investigate their group, and the criminals doing the same thing, where it's like they really show this how similar the different organizations and groups are, how the cops are similar to the robbers in so many different ways. And I think, again, with a great cast, I mean, like, on the forefront, you're like, and I talk on the forefront, you're like, okay, Jack Nicholson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, but the supporting cast is great. With Alec Baldwin and Mark Wahlberg. Like, who knew Mark Wahlberg would end up being like almost like the hero of the film in some ways. But this film is bold. That whole the ending with first, what shook me to the core was when the undercover cop got shot, and you're like, what? It was a mistake, and they're like, oh, Frank is not gonna only have one undercover cop or undercover criminal, and then you're like, oh, there's more. Then he shoots the other cop, the big cop, the fat cop, and then guess what? Then you know Matt Damon kills the other undercover criminal, and then Mark Wahlberg kills Matt Damon, and it's like, but it all fits in. Where it's like you can laugh at it a little bit, and the ending is strange and I'm pretty crazy, but I think it would make sense that all this stuff would go down, because why all of a sudden would they just like for example the captain, captain of the police force just got thrown off a roof, and then you're just gonna lay off his right hand man. Instead, no, he's really investigating, investigating Damon's character, and I think that's what made it clever about it. Where it's like at first you're like, everything. I think it very very much sets it up great. Where it didn't come out of nowhere that Wahlberg was able to kill him, because it made sense. Because, oh yeah, why would they just lay him off? Oh yeah, because he's gonna do this, and that, and getting great performances because of that all-star cast we talked about. And it's just a great cop movie as well. I think exploring like the cops and their different work methods, and I love how they talk about how how the court of law has to do with it, where it's like Leo just left the police force, and then he has to arrest the undercover undercover criminal, and instead of being like oh yeah, arrest me, arrest me, he it makes sense. He wants to arrest the undercover cop, the undercover criminal, but he can't arrest him because he said he was no longer he didn't want to be a policeman anymore. And I think so that playing the aspect of you can't just arrest someone, and he's saying how, like, if you should kill me, you're killing a cop. They have no proof that I work with him, but obviously he had the tapes. And and then the therapist having an affair with Leo and Matt, on top of her her figuring out what really is the truth. And all these different characters really play to the story and play to the strengths of this film. And I think because every character has its reasons for being there. And I think the therapist to help with Leo's having to they really talk about this idea of like it's a struggle to be an undercover criminal or undercover cop, because you have to basically transform who you are into the person you want to stop. and he struggles with that, you know. And then like the cop, the undercover criminal loves, the therapist as well, and they both need her, and she figures out the truth, and has to leave, and all this, shenanigans there, but really to drive our main character's motivations. But again, I think this film was very bold and surprising, and so what I love about this film is there's no what would it be called? There's no limit to how daring it could be, because on the forefront you have our three big characters. You got Frank, and then you have the undercover criminal and the undercover cop. All three of them get killed, and I think because again, this film is willing to take those bold, big, huge risks. And what I love that, so that like when I ever show it to someone, it doesn't play it safe, and I love films that take bold risks because it feels unique. Because so many films play it safe, here it goes for it, and I think it goes for it well with having great performances, a great cast, and a story that keeps going forward of how are they going to figure out who's the rat in the police force? How are they going to figure out who's the rat in the criminal organization? What's the goal of the criminal? Like, it's less about what are the criminal organizations doing, because they don't really focus on that. It's mainly about, okay, someone's spying on the cops, someone's spying on the criminals, and finding that. So it's almost like a mystery film. And it's not really a mystery film because you know the rat in both the criminals and the cops. It's more about how do we stop Frank and find the rat? And then for the criminals, how do we go about our daily, crime life and deal with the fact that we have a rat in the organization? I think it's clever because it takes the cop action genre and twists it completely on the head, where it's like you have this, like, at first you see all these, cop goes undercover, but what tricks it about is it's not just cop goes undercover, where it's like the first half is similar to that, very much like that, where the cop goes undercover, and spies on the criminal, and then the criminal, spies on the cop. But halfway through the film, they both get suspicious after the whole incident where, where the police put cameras in the warehouse they're at, and yet somehow the criminals knew how to turn off phones, and so it's like they both kind of start to really get suspicious of each other. And I love, again, the cleverness, where it's like you would think, for certain tell-alls, little details, allow each of our characters to know certain things, like why does Matt Damon have the citizens envelope unless he is working with the criminals? Why does so and so do this, and why would you just lay off Mark Wahlberg's character? Oh no, he's not. They're just he's actually doing his own investigation and whatnot. And so it's these cleverness fluttered throughout this film that make it so great, where it's like you can have the great performances, you can have the great cast, and the film, because of the bold risks story-wise, it feels unique, and so it's not just another crime film, but because again they put that huge twist of there's a rat in the cops, there's a rat in the criminals, and they both need to solve their mission. We have to deal with the rat, but we also have to stop them. And what I love is they'll constantly be in a chase or a shootout, but there's this extra layer to it where both sides are trying to stay undercover and help their faction they really work for. Because you'll have a scene where there's a shootout, but Matt Damon's telling them, no, don't shoot the criminals. And then there's another scene where it's Leo's like, oh, don't shoot me, but we shoot these people, or this and that. And you'll have a scene where it's they're in a chase, and it's very, again, clever. I think that's just a really prime word to use, and I love how the like one of the robbers get killed, but they stage it as if he was the undercover cop, um and like, doing the different reports, um and in knowing different things and being suspect of different people, and it's a very intellectual, complex film, but it's really not. It's really, the cops want to stop the criminals. They put an undercover cop in, but yet secretly, little do they know, there's an undercover criminal in the cops. They figure that out, but they don't figure out who. So now it's that complexity of criminals. How do we, do the crimes and get away with it? And this extra adage of we have to keep in touch together. Frank and the undercover, cop, and the undercover criminal, they have to keep in touch. The criminal and the Frank and the criminal. At the same time, it's this I guess symbolic relationship where it's like you see two very similar things happen, just on two very different sides. The criminals and the cops are doing the same thing, and I love that. Again, symbolism, I think, is the best word I can come up with in terms of what this film almost resembles of the symbolism of the cops have a rat in their organization and the criminals, and yet the Frank and the undercover criminal have to communicate. The colonel, or the police force captain, and the undercover cop have to talk and also communicate. And so I think and the different pieces to figure, like, because ultimately, yes, they all figure out who's you know the undercover criminal figures out who's the undercover cop. The undercover cop figures out who the undercover criminal is, and through clever ways, through multiple clues that are played out throughout the 2.5 hour runtime. So this film is I'd recommend it because it is very, very interesting, and it can be humorous at times. It could be bold and risky at times. It can be interesting. If it's always interesting, but it's also clever. And there's so much. I love when films layer out simple details that pay off dividends throughout the film if you pay attention. Because, like, when you pay attention to, I love when you can pay attention to films and be rewarded for paying attention to films. Where it's like if you pay attention to these different relationships, you'll understand how that pays off. On top of different things of the undercover, and these characters are smart. What I love is the story's smart, but because they write because I'm assuming Martin Scorsese also wrote the film. I'm just assuming. I don't think he writes films, so actually I'm gonna assume whoever wrote this film was able to write the smart characters, and I think complex characters, where I don't believe Matt Damon's really a bad character. It's just that he was his father figure, quote unquote, being Frank. He was just, that's his only way, where he never really does anything that villainous per se. He's just trying to help out a friend, and vice versa. A Leo, he's just trying to do a mission. Like I don't think Leo's particularly a hero, but also I don't think Matt's particularly a villain. It's really Frank against the cops with multiple rogue characters. I think that's the thing, where it's like it's not cop versus criminals. It's, you got cops and you got criminals, and then you got rogue puzzle pieces. You got Matt Damon's criminal, and you got the Leo cop and the therapist right in the middle. And I think so yeah, I really think this film, and it's like, well, I don't think this film's perfect. I think I think what's it called? I think the beginning was a little bit weird how it's like Jack Nicholson didn't age a day from the first beginning of the film when he's young. Because I think when he was younger, when there was younger Frank, I think mainly it looked like he didn't age a day because they didn't have effects like they did now, so they were just like, stay in the shadows. And young Damon character, whatever. I mean, what else? the ending, as great as bold as it was, it felt a little bit out of place because it felt like it would be good with like a comedy, almost like it felt a little bit out of place. The very ending when Mark Wahlberg kills Matt Damon, that felt it. Like I get the stuff with killing Leo and all that stuff. That was not necessarily the most out of place stuff, but like the stuff at the very end where it's like Mark Wahlberg killing Matt Damon, it did feel a little bit out of place. Where it's like, because like there were so many cop spoofs where similar things happened. That kind of took me by surprise. It was just so bold, and maybe not necessarily. I couldn't say you're maybe too bold in that it felt too jarring. But again, overall, a really great film. So yeah, stay tuned for videos coming at you.